Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the BrightEyes Podcast. My name is Daniel Cow and I will be your host for these podcasts. The BrightEyes Podcast is a brand new monthly podcast series that we'll be putting out, interviewing people under the age of 30, from talking about topics from anywhere from entrepreneurship to their schooling to finding work to life in general. We'll be putting these out once a month, as I said. So follow us on Facebook, Twitter, to stay updated with what we have. Today's podcast is a very special one because I will sit down and interview one of my mentors, and she is actually the founder of BrightEyes herself. In this interview, we'll talk about things related to her experiences at UCSD, how she started, and where she went from UCSD to get to where she is today. I hope this podcast is interesting to you guys, and I hope that it's a good experience, and feel free to let me know any comments, suggestions, or questions you have. You can reach me on Twitter at Diplativo, that's at DIPLATEEVO, and that is probably the best way to reach me. So without further ado, welcome to the BrightEyes Podcast.
We at BrightEyes recognize that to be successful, we all require someone willing to invest in our potential and vision.
Today I have the privilege of interviewing a very, very special guest, the founder of BrightEyes herself. She is a UCSD alumni, worked with her and did the tours with her last year, and she is now, and we now work together to put together next year's tour. And before I go on butchering anymore, Tiffany, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I am the founder of BrightEyes, and I graduated from UCSD just about 2 years ago, class of 2012. Graduated with management science major and minored in accounting. Currently, I'm working at a company called Souls, and we create custom 3D printed orthotics. So we are a startup, and it's very exciting to be working also along with a woman founder, Kagan Schuenberg, and we're based here in New York. Before that, I had spent some time in a lot of different places. So a little bit in finance, where I worked at Duff and Phelps, did some consulting, tech consulting at Deloitte Consulting, and also did a little bit tech finance, corporate finance at Qualcomm, and also dabbled a little bit in the 3D printing space too with 3D hubs. So it's been quite a journey in just a few years since college.
That's quite a journey, yeah. We'll get into some questions of BrightEyes a little bit later, but I guess I want to drill down a little bit deeper into, your whole, history of, getting into UCSD, what drove you to, be so ambitious? Were you always this ambitious in high school and college, or was there kind of something that, was there a turning point or something?
Well, I guess, to start with the first part of your question about what drew me to UCSD. So I think there were really, three things. I think one was I actually was very actively recruiting for volleyball while I was in high school. And UCSD was a school that I had looked at, and I knew that they had a really great school UCSD program in D2, and also their club program. So that was something that was really exciting for me and that I was considering. Another one was, location. I wanted to be in California. I wasn't ready to leave, which is funny because now I'm all the way in New York. But California was where I wanted to be, but not too close to home, but far enough that I could call it college away from home.
Yeah.
And I think, the third reason really was the economics program. So I had a really great AP economics teacher in high school, and he was the one who really got me interested in economics. And so when I looked at the program at UCSD, it's definitely one of the best, and that's where I wanted to see myself, and I was really there for the education.
Cool. So then let's jump fast forward a little bit into starting BrightEyes, and I think you mentioned that you had a New York trip that changed a lot for you. Why don't you explain a little bit about that?
Sure. So I believe it was my junior summer, and I had just finished my Deloitte consulting internship. So I was really curious to kind of take the time in between my internship and before starting the next school year to go and explore the finance industry. And so in my mind, I was thinking, what better way to do that than just to go and see it and talk to people. So I ended up just booking a flight to New York. And actually there was a professor, his name was Professor Dunn, and he told me, Tiffany, just go do it. No one's going to tell you what to do. So I just booked my flight and I went to New York, stayed with a friend, and I just reached out to as many people as I possibly could to talk to them and ask them, what do you do? What can I do? How did you get to where you did? Were really important, and I also learned a lot about myself. Whether it was talking to someone and the conversation, how to lead in the conversation, or how to reach out to people and get them to respond to you, how to develop a relationship. I learned about my own strengths and where I envisioned myself, and that in itself as a trip was just extremely valuable. And
That's great. Before, there's so many thoughts there and so many things that I want to really dive into. Among those we'll get to in a little bit. But first, I just kind of wanted to touch on, how did you reach out to those people when you came to New York? Was it just kind of you found about them online, or was LinkedIn a big part back then, or no? Or how did you do it?
Yeah, so thinking back a little bit, it was definitely there was a lot of cold calling. So whether it was LinkedIn, I got crafty with I actually think I developed a really interesting ability to be able to find people's contact information, which is a little bit creepy and also speaks to the insecurity of the internet. But yeah, LinkedIn was helpful. And
Twitter?
I went through, not Twitter. I stayed away from Twitter and Facebook because I felt that might have come off a little immature. I did go through friends, so a lot of friends of friends. I also, was involved with a couple organizations and had asked people in those organizations to help put me in touch with individuals. But for the most part, there was a good amount of cold calling. So, the success rate wasn't 100%. But I got enough meetings to keep me here for about a week and a half.
Yeah, you said before, you actually postponed your flight home or something like that?
Yeah, so there was one meeting with, his name is R.A. Borkoff, and he recently started his own investment bank called Lion Tree. And we were supposed to meet within the week that I had planned my trip, and his assistant got back to me and was like, oh, actually, he won't be able to meet until next week. And so I thought about it. I was like, oh, what do I do? And, I said, this just one of those opportunities. And so I actually just delayed my flight and took that meeting, and it actually proved extremely helpful. And I was glad I did it.
That's great. Okay. And then now let's get a little bit into the BrightEyes. So you mentioned you wanted to do that for other students. You wanted that kind of opportunity given to other students, and so I guess my question is how, what were the initial steps? Was it something that you just had an idea, but then how did you get from idea to actually starting it? What were the challenges, and did you ever hesitate, or was it do I really want to do this? Do I not want to do this, or were you just completely sold on the idea?
Yeah, so I think I came back and I had that idea. I was other students should have it. I didn't really act on it immediately, but I was really strong about other students should have this opportunity. And so it started off with me just pushing any younger student or any of my friends even to be you guys should do this. Go to other schools recruiting opportunities, or go and travel to the city you want to see yourself, the industry, talk to people. We need to network. So it started off just like that, and one day actually I was running in Remac at the gym, and I was on the treadmill, and it occurred to me, I was like, you know, there should be a program. We should get funding. Like, we need to act on this. Like, I'm a senior. I only have one more year, and I'm going to graduate. Wow. And so I literally, like, I was on the treadmill. I slam stopped, and I, like, ran home. And actually, I totally remember this because my roommate was home, and I ran to her, and I was like, Erica, like, I have this amazing idea. And so we started writing out just on the nearest paper with us. And honestly, I didn't really know where to start, but that layout itself kind of drew out the mission, the vision, like the purpose for the program, and I had determined then that it would be a program. And I think from there, I just started approaching, you know, individuals about it. I approached a few professors, and you know, I had gone to the economics department. Some of the student organizations I pitched it to stood behind me. And, you know, all of that is kind of like a blur now, but it somehow just blended together and worked out. And it was great that the economics department funded us for our first trip. The very first application that opened, we got like 100-something applications, and it was overwhelming. And our first trip only flew 2 students.
Wow. Yeah.
So it was a whirlwind, but there were definitely times where I wasn't sure if, you know, we could, like, the whole idea of flying students out all the way to New York or San Francisco, it seemed almost impossible in the beginning. And especially the idea of having them completely paid for and giving them this opportunity was definitely difficult to, like, come about.
That's great. Yeah, so the first year was in New York, right?
Yeah.
And then, so why don't you talk a little bit about, like, the difference between the 2 years and kind of also where you see it going in the future?
Yeah, so the first year was New York, and the reason for that was, you know, from my trip, I had established a lot of great relationships that, you know, I thought that other students could be, you know, meet with those individuals. And also, you know, at that time in, like, my kind of, like, point of career, I was entering the finance industry, so I felt that, you know, the resources that I used to kind of educate myself and on, like, build my industry knowledge, and, you know, all of that was something that I could give immediately to students. And so that kind of was the reason why the first trip was New York and finance. And, you know, we only had 2 students. The budget was much smaller. It was a lot of craziness, you know, jumping in and out of subways, out of cabs. Like, I remember, like, being all the way up in Midtown, and we were trying to catch a cab to go all the way downtown so that we could make this one meeting at the Fed. So it was pretty crazy. But it was incredible to see these students from the very beginning develop towards the end of the trip. And it was even a more incredible feeling when these 2 students landed both full-time jobs at, you know, places they wanted to be in. And so then the second trip came around, and, you know, I realized that there was a lot of interest kind of like in the startup world. And, you know, I felt that although there are a lot of opportunities on campus already, and I think UCSD does a great job of that, you know, I think there's a lot on campus, and again, it's the idea of, you know, opening students, exposing them out, you know, outside of campus to the actual industry, to people actually in this industry, and helping them identify those mentors and opportunities they otherwise wouldn't be able to do. So the second trip was San Francisco, and we were able to get more funding. And that's when we did, you know, the 5 students. I brought in another team member, you know, Caesar Fang, and he was great because...
Shout out to Caesar Fang.
Yeah, thank you, Caesar. He's awesome. And yeah, so, you know, it was great because I couldn't be on campus now to plan it, unlike the last trip. So we had Caesar on the ground on campus. And it also occurred to me that it was great to have it more student run because, you know, while I was a student, I understood what the needs for students were because I needed them. And they change year over year and the industry changes. And so, you know, to have someone off campus in the industry communicate with someone on campus and to plan the program seemed effective to me. So that worked out really well. And San Francisco was great. You know, we were able to establish and leverage existing relationships between me and Caesar, and the school, you know, obviously helped out. And it was a huge success, I think. We partnered with Lyft, and there's so much that happened on the trip. I mean, you were on that trip, so you know exactly what happened.
No, it definitely was one of the more formative. I think before I was very interested in tech and startups in general, but I really didn't have much of a grid for what venture capital was, or how to raise money or any of that stuff. And definitely, I wouldn't say the trip answered all my questions, but it definitely introduced me to not only people, but a bunch of ideas that I later looked into, and now I'm just, it's like all day, all the books I read and everything. That being said, where do you see BrightEyes in the next 2, 3, 5 years? What are your dreams and aspirations for this program?
Right. So, I think we've done 2 trips now, and I want to see it to be more recurring. I think that the trip planning process and everything, it's not standardized. It's not easily repeatable yet. So I want us to get there, and I think this coming year will definitely prove that, because based on the last trips, there's just so much excitement. And the people involved, from the students to the alumni to just other participating companies and industry professionals, they just want to be a part of it, and they want to help out, and it's amazing. And so I want to see it recurring every year. I obviously want to see more students come on. We've gone from 2 to 5, and so hopefully we can go to 10 very soon, and we can get that funding the funding we need to bring as many students as possible. And obviously with stuff like this, the podcast, and just offering very innovative ways to get students to access the resources they need, so that they feel that they can be accepted easily into these opportunities and the industries that they want to be in, and more importantly, they know where to go find these resources and get those opportunities.
That's great. That's great. Yeah. So just a quick plug. If you're watching this and you would love to support, we'll leave some sort of link or email in the description below. So probably somewhere below me there will be a link. And we'll refresh at the end we'll mention this again at the end. But that being said, I kind of now want to pivot a little bit and get back into what you were saying about learning more about yourself. Because definitely I remember during the trip, one of the most kind of memorable moment for me was when you were talking about just being very comfortable with yourself and knowing yourself very well, knowing how to portray yourself and all those things. And I think that's something that I did, something pretty big that I took away from the trip, and that I spent some time thinking about, and I still think about every so often, and as I think we all should. But I really enjoyed your perspective on it, and just your ability to network is something that I really admire, and something I really want to learn from. So that whole word jumble aside, would love to hear your thoughts on that, and that whole spiel.
Okay. So I think in terms of self-awareness, that's something that I heavily emphasize, for myself and to anyone who asks me about it or asks for advice. And the reason is, I think that especially in your college years, you're exploring, we're constantly exploring your interests, but there's a little bit more pressure on you, and the timeline's a little bit shorter for when you graduate, and you have to go get a job, and you have to do all these internships. And I feel that it's very easy to get lost in all those classes and changing majors or trying to find the right internship for you. And I think that when you're self-aware, and what I mean by that is you truly understand, you take the time to sit down and you're what are your strengths and what really are your weaknesses? And surprisingly enough, those are very hard questions to answer in an interview when those are asked, and they are actually asked very, very often. I think understanding those two things, and I think it really helps you identify also your passion, You know, we do want to be good at, you know, what we're doing, and we love, you know, like being able to, you know, do well at what we're doing. And I think that you can only do well at something if you truly like it. And so that it just flows, all of that, being able to understand yourself and then be able to take action based on what you know that you can do. And I think that, you know, the students who can actually understand their passion and strengths and use those to basically chase opportunities and go after them and be able to tell a compelling story to those that they want to, you know, get the opportunity from, like it really sets them apart. And you know, it's the saying goes that you should take time to explore all of those, but I think when you have, you know, an instinct that you realize a strength or passion, you should just go after it.
I've heard it said that you know, that when you network, when you meet someone new, you know, the thing isn't like, it isn't about like, you know, how much can I take from this person, you know, but you know, since it's the whole idea of, you know, a relationship where it's like, let me get to know you and I want you to get to know me too. Like, I've heard it said that you should add value, right? It's about what value can you add to them, because then it becomes kind of, even though it's kind of a mentor-mentee, it's almost a kind of symbiotic, you know, relationship where it just becomes very interesting. And I found that, you know, personally, kind of challenging with certain people that I meet, that I'm like, you know, I love talking to this person, but I don't know what I can offer to value. I don't want to be a nuisance, you know, like, how do you balance that? Like, how do you, or what do you do to add value?
Right. So I first of all, I completely agree with that. You, like, it is a two-way street. It's not just you go in there and it's, you know, like you try to take. So like I said, I had prepped for this meeting. I, you know, shared with him like all my ideas that I had. I shared with him my passion. And, you know, with that said, I think that is what you offer, especially as a student or like a young individual who's like starting out. You offer, you know, your passion, your excitement, share your ideas, and these are the things that, you know, people who are much older, like they love that kind of like young spirit. And I think you show like how genuine you are. That's what you offer, and that you're willing to listen and accept their advice, and that for someone who's giving it is extremely rewarding. And, you know, I think that like if you can, like, you know, the world changes so fast, and you should like just offer any ideas you have and not be afraid to just speak your mind about what ideas how you see the world, or, you know, certain things, like, and that's probably the most helpful to them, actually.
I think what's cool is, you know, now that you started this whole BrightEyes thing, you know, you're kind of on the other side of it too, you know. I think what I'm curious to know, just even personally, is, you know, why do you do all this? You know, why do you, you know, let me sleep on your couch here in New York and, you know, kind of parent like like these college kids on a trip? Like, I know for me personally, after I graduated, I might be like, oh, I don't want anything to do with college kids, you know?
Oh, but you won't, because they're going to be part of BrightEyes. So.
I think I'm stuck in this. But
it's funny you asked that. Actually, a lot of during the interviews, and one of the previous BrightEyes team members, Hannes, actually, was asking me, and I got the question a lot, like, what do you get out of it? Yeah. And it was like a very blunt, like straightforward question, which I thought was really funny. But, you know, like, I'm not really, you know, I really am not looking anything out of this. I think it's just so rewarding to be able to make sure that, you know, other students after me are able to get the experience that I really wanted. And to see that, you know, an idea to want to help someone can be a reality, and that every year, every trip, we're seeing progress. We're seeing students like be able to achieve things that they want to do, be able to access the resource that they wanted, be able to meet the individuals that they never thought they could, and get the mentors that really like makes a difference in their life. And, you know, even for me going forward, like, you that happens for me too, getting access to resources, meeting individuals, all of that. And it's just extremely rewarding. And I think to be able to provide that and also be a part of that is just, you couldn't ask for more. And it keeps me going. And I see how students want more from this program. We get requests on all different things regarding the program. When's the next application? Where's the next trip gonna be? How many students? And it just keeps you going.
Yeah. Wow. That's a great answer. I couldn't have said it better myself, even though I'm now joining the team. So here's a question that I'm personally very curious about, and I've been meaning to ask you for a while, and this is something that I think would be very helpful to many people out there listening to, is like how do you carry yourself kind of as a woman in a very male kind of dominated industries? I know like both finance and kind of tech is very male dominated. How do you feel about that? Like how do you approach that?
Yeah, so I think when I first approached kind of this type of environment, I thought that I should be very boy-like, and that I should, be one of the guys and hang with the guys. And I soon found out that, after getting into the industry, that, that's not the way to approach it. And really, I think if women really want to be respected in the workplace, they need to have pride and confidence in being a woman. That means, embracing whatever the girly stuff is and not feeling like they need to conform, because I think, sometimes where the mistake is, or not, I wouldn't say mistake, but, kind of what sets back women from being independent and identified, truly as herself, is that, she comes in and she's intimidated by this very male-dominated workforce, and she wants to fit in. And that's essentially what we always want to do, is we want to fit in. But really it's about, the funny thing is it's about standing out and getting that respect to fit in. So I wrote a blog post a while ago on that, and it's actually called like Standing Out.
Okay.
So
we will share that too in the description. Thing I might add too is, I think in the different works and internships that I've had, I've noticed that when there are other women working there, that I do really appreciate that perspective there, and that not only applies to workplace, but even like just mentors and mentorship and that too. Like I found having a good balance of both is very, very crucial, because there's a lot of things that you tell me that that like guys wouldn't. I think that has been very, very helpful in the past couple months or however long we've known each other.
Yeah.
Cool. So I'm gonna switch gears here a little bit.
Okay.
And I'm gonna throw a kind of harder question, and maybe something that I've asked everyone on this podcast, and that's kind of, what does success mean to you? What does that look like? At the end of the day, like what is your end game, if I may put it that way?
That is a tough question. I think to answer that, I'll just go with, what really just comes to mind right away when someone says like success. So for me, I think it is a lot of, the very first thing is just being happy. I think you just have to absolutely, enjoy what you do. And obviously that comes with like, loving what you do and constantly finding curiosity, for whatever that is you're doing, and, searching for answers and asking and finding that kind of like urge to ask questions. I think being able to do that is what I think is success, is being happy and curious. I think in addition to that, it's also being able to, give back what you learn. I think, pay it forward. I think like, what does it mean to learn and absorb if you can't pass it on. Some of the most rewarding, things is to be able to see somebody else learn from you and have them be more successful than you. And I mean, I think that's essentially what, we hope to do with BrightEyes too. But yeah, I think that, to summarize, I think, long answer is be happy with whatever you're doing, and make sure that you're constantly learning, because I think that when you stop learning, you stop enjoying. So I think that's very much part of success. And once you ask those questions and you learn the answers, make sure you pass those answers on.
I love it. That is such a great answer. Retweet it. Quote it.
There's the link.
Yeah, that's great. Hashtag BrightEyes.
Yes.
Cool. So, I think that being said, I'm going to go into a little more kind of casual rapid fire questions. So feel free to take as long as you want to answer these, or as short as you want. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
If you find one interesting that you want to drill down into, feel free to do that. If you could give your 10-year younger self some advice, what would you say?
What was I doing? 10-year younger self.
Or you could pick the age.
Yeah, I think it would still be that. It would be to, if you have any interest in anything at all, just go for it, because you really don't know what passion is until you're doing it and you find yourself just wanting to do it, and you can't strip yourself away from that. So I think that would be my advice, and do it, whatever it is that interests you.
Cool. What do your daily routines look like? Are there any special rituals that you have found to be extremely helpful on a regular basis?
First thing, eat breakfast. Everybody should eat their breakfast. And I think the second thing is I always, before I start my day, I actually write out my to-dos, and that's at night, and we can get to that, but every morning I review what I need to get done for the whole day, and that kind of gives me a very clear goal of what I want to accomplish. So that's something I do at the very start of my day too. Exercise, I need that it helps me think, it helps relieve stress. It's really important to me, I think, keeping your body healthy. And then what I was talking about before is that at the end of the day, I sit down and review what things that now are on my to-do list, what do I need to do tomorrow, in a week. And I think that spending the extra time in the beginning of your day and at the end of your day doing that, and making it part of your routine, it's you're so much more organized when walking in and leaving, and the way you go about life too.
That's great. Well, it's been a pleasure having you on the podcast. I'm sure we'll do it again at some point. My last and final question, where can people find out more about you?
So they can follow me on Twitter, at Tiffany D. Stone. They can check out my blog, tiffanyDstone.com. Yes, definitely always own your own domain when you have a blog.
I agree.
And they should follow BrightEyes, because we'll be sharing podcasts, writing blogs, and yeah.
And as I mentioned earlier in the podcast, if you are interested in what BrightEyes is doing, you can email us. We'll put the email below.
The link.
Yeah. And so, or if you're interested in help sponsoring our next year's program, or anything of that sort, would love to hear from you. So please don't hesitate to shoot us an email. With that said, it's been a lot of fun. Thank you. And until next time.
Okay.
We at BrightEyes recognize that to be successful, we all require someone willing to invest in our potential and vision.